Jeff, but everybody calls me Cheesy. And it's a long story. I'm not going to tell now. It's going to take a full hour. I don't have enough alcohol in it, so I can't hear. So today, I want you to leave here thinking differently about the way you work with your teams. Okay, the way you interact with people on your teams. So let's get the party started. I need some volunteers first of all because it's going to be, oh, thank you. We have our first volunteer. Come on up, come on up. What's your name? Greg, what do you do, Greg? You're a software dev. Today you're not a software dev, okay? Today you're my tester. All right, so I have some clothes for you to put on, so let's get started here. Let's see, as a software tester, you're sort of a tracking cost, right? So here you go, you get a nice, wonderful hat. And also, software testers kind of have this reputation of whining and complaining a lot, so I got a little pacifier here. You can hang on to this. And last but not least, because you really need to be accessorized, I've got this blue too, by the way, so it matches your hat. I've got this wonderful blue boa. Here, oops, it still has the tag on it. We gotta take that off, though. Here you go. And why don't you go over and have a seat? And Ian, you're my second volunteer. Thank you. Come on up, Ian. Awesome. Wow. Thank you for that. I didn't really get a chance to earn that meeting. So I know what you do, but today you're going to be a developer. How's that sound? Okay? So let's see. What do we have to do for development? We'll start off with this lovely cheeseburger hat. Okay? There you go. Now, when I packed in Cleveland before flying out here today, everybody put it on. Oh, guys, what do you think? Yeah! So I had this little necklace that had these little mini beer steins on it, and when I packed it was there, but when I got here it wasn't. So I'm sorry, man, you're gonna have to go without. But can you have a seat? Yeah. I need another volunteer. Who else? Well, thank you. Thank you. Come on up. I just love it when people raise their hands so quickly, right? Chris, what do you do?
I'm a developer.
A development director. Well, today, you're my usability UX person, okay? And of course, usability UX people, you know, have to be very artsy, right? So there's your lovely hat. And, yes, here you go. How nice. And just go over and have seats. Over here, now I need one last volunteer. Thank you. Come on up. Wow, this is great. We're off to a good start. What is your name and what do you do? You're a project manager. Well, today you're a product owner. Okay? You good with that? So let's see. Oh, I do have another hat. This is the pizza hat. Because product owners, they typically want everything on it. You know, they want everything, right? So here you go. You just get a hat. And, oh yeah, the product owners think a lot about the money and stuff. You also get to look at this ring. Isn't that nice? Huh? How nice. Wonderful. And I've got a few more things here. I'll pass them out. Here, product owner, you get to hold, we call this the ball. You get to hold the ball. Here, you get this defect, you get this defect, and this is an email. Okay? So let me give you a visual here. This is an email. Whenever you want to send an email to somebody, okay, you got it? Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank God that's out of the way. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little bit of role playing. And we're going to play some skits and have some fun, because I like fun. And what they're going to do is they're going to act out some things that we'll cover here in just a moment, and you guys get to judge how well they act out. And whoever is the winner each time you do it wins some of these babies. I'm telling you, this is hot, right? Come on. Now, how do we judge them? Well, obviously their acting skills is really important. But also, I really want them to bring out the stereotypes and their roles. For example, if you're a developer, what do you do with code when you're done? You throw it over the wall, right? Or you used to say things like, well, it works on my machine, or whatever. You know, whatever the stereotype is out, we want to play them all, okay? And so whoever you think does a great job of that, a great job of acting after each round, wins some beats. Fair enough? So, how do you know what you're going to act out? Well, I'm going to have some little animations that are going to play up here on the screen, okay? And then after the animation, then you guys need to kind of act yourself. I'm not going to give you any of the words. You need to make them up, okay? Yeah, it's improvisation. Fantastic. Now this is not the first one, but this is just a little example so you can get an idea of what we're doing. By the way, you'll notice there's like a little label on each of your chairs, and that kind of corresponds to some of the columns here on this board that we're going to move some stories across, okay? There also is a card hanging on the back wall, which says meeting. You'll know what that means in a little while, okay? Pretty good? So this one you don't have to act out. I'm just going to do this one just to kind of take us off, okay? The next one you will. Perfect. So every time that I go to work with a new team or a new company, and they've already been doing a little bit of Agile, so I sit down with them and say, so tell me, what is it you do? How do you do it? I really want to understand this. What you're going to see here is every time what they tell me they do, okay? So, well, we've got our product owner, developer, and tester here. We've got our story card up here. And this is the ball. Okay, so you see the ball there, right? This is the ball. And so the ball gets passed around and things like that, okay? So we start off with the product owner, and when at some point the developer picks up the story and works it, and you see he gets the ball. And when he's done, it goes over to somebody to test the software. And when they're done, it comes over to review, and of course the product owner comes and reviews it. And he loves it every time, he or she loves it every time. And last but not least, the story goes to done. So this is exactly what I'm told. Every time, here's exactly how we do it, right? After spending a week or so with the team, though, I'll show you what I learned. We'll talk about reality, okay? This is the first one you guys are going to act, so pay a little bit of attention, okay? So this is the reality of how most teams are doing it. So we're starting at the same position, and the very first thing that happens is the product owner runs off to meetings. Of course, somebody's got to figure out what it is we're going to build next week, so we've got to have all these meetings to figure that out. Is that right?
That is right.
Yes, yeah. But that's okay, because we've got a really sharp team, and they know what they're doing, so someone's going to pick up the ball and run with it anyway. So we pick up the ball and move into development. No, we have to go through it, and you can act the whole thing. So you have to pay attention. I know it's hard. ADD, I know. Focus. Squirrel, focus. And so the developer picks up the story. So things aren't too bad so far, until the developer has a question. It's not quite clear what this large Word document means. And so he does what every good corporate citizen does. He sends an email. Okay, so we send an email, and a day and a half or so later we get the reply. So everything's good, right? Notice the tester was not really included on that email. So now we've really got kind of two ideas of what it is we're supposed to build. We've got what the developer just found out and what was the tester learned at one point. But that's okay, because the tester's busy writing their test plans anyway. They can't be bothered with any changes. They're too busy writing the test plans. Eventually, the story moves to test, and we are done. We're pretty happy about that, right? Except for the fact that so often we find these nasty little defects or these little bugs that pop out. You guys got the bugs? Yes? All right. And so what we realized is that we thought we were done, but we're really not done at all, right? So we still got more work to do. And what does that look like? Well, often, especially in larger companies, we need to, of course, track that. In fact, we got to go to the quality center and enter all the details about it, right? It's got to go to prioritization. Someone's got to figure out, do we want to do it now or do we want to defer it later? How serious is the defect? Eventually, it makes it back to the developer. He fixes it, and eventually, everything gets done. Okay, so the story moves to review. Of course, the product owner still is in meetings. We don't know when they'll be back, so heaven forbid if they should come back and actually not like what they see, but we're not going to go there. We're going to say that the product owner comes back, they look at it, and they feel good about the story. Okay, so we move to done. And everybody's happy because we are done. Except, after we're done, sometimes we still have to look at the story. For example, it might be common to have some usability folks who take a look at this thing after we're done, because we can't look at it while it's still being built. It's too fragile, too volatile at that time. time. So let's wait till it's done, then we'll look at it. The only problem is that they can sometimes find defects as well. Now this UX person is a stand-in for anybody who looks at the software after the fact. It could be like a security team, or load testing, or audit group, or whatever. Any group that looks at the software after the team says it's done, has the ability to say, nope, it's not done. And so we end up not done, and what a sad thing it is. So the question is that an actual failure or not? And this is some of what we're going to explore today. But first of all, I think we need to hear from our actors and actresses. What do you think? Is everyone, what do you think? Yeah? Thank you. All right. So I want to take like 30 seconds or so. Okay, if you want to do any planning, and then you guys need to stand up and act this whole thing out. Remember, stereotypes and fun. We want to laugh. Okay? So go for it. That is, oh, I like the pizza hat.
Yeah.
I got hungry when I was packing that one. See, this is my chance to drink coffee. Are we ready? Yes. I see these guys like big design up front. That's all I'm going to have to break with that task. We'll work on that as we go forward. No? Oh, okay. All right, go ahead. You have the stage.
Okay. Get started on this awesome story.
Okay, what's going on?
Yeah, so I don't get this. What is this supposed to do? I see some tests. I see a description. Yeah. Better ask some questions about that. It's not around anywhere. Help.
Just anybody?
Ask
Are we building
your email and see what I can come up with. In the meantime, I'm just going to start coding some shit because, why not? Right? I'll take my best guess because it's been a day now and I haven't heard back. This product owner MIA.
Maybe we should plan what we're going to do.
Yeah.
When
I talked to my buddy and he said that, this other product worked like this, so I'm just going to hack that in and be done with it and tests are passing. Awesome. Great.
Let's just climb over the wall. Alright.
What's this?
Defects. Send that back.
That sucks. Oh, man. Well, I guess, yeah. Right. Worked on my machine, no problem. And the CI I set up on that branch was fine. And I merged it in
at some point.
Shut up over there. I think we're good now, though. I heard back from the product owner, and she sort of said that I needed to make this one change. And, so I've got that sort of. Oh, now I'm going to spend a little time refactoring. All right, I think we're good now. Let's try this again. Don't write up shit on me again.
Good. You look so good today. Test pass. I'm going to say that guy's done.
Where is she? It's done. It's done. Go check it out. Yeah, it's awesome.
to involve me. And peace signs? Yeah, no, I think you guys need to go back to the drawing board on this one.
Story.
You guys need to fix it.
Rinse and repeat.
Now I'm next.
All right. Okay, come on back. Amazing. So now you guys get to judge. I'll tell you that there's 3 beads on the line here. So I'm going to hold my hand above their head, and you get to clap with who you think did the best acting job. So we'll start right here. That wasn't close, Bob. And I think you get 3 more to match your first.
He had an easy
goal.
Overactor.
Okay, the sad thing is that even though we laugh at this, that really is the state of a lot of our agile teams these days, and it's very unfortunate. But we're going to talk about what we can do. We're going to talk about some things. We're going to change it around a little bit, and each time the activities are a little bit different. Okay. So anyway, so let's move on. I want to introduce an idea first of all. So the idea is that as we look at how stories kind of move through teams, there's 2 types of milestones that I observe as we go through. And the first is, I call it just a marker milestone, or milestone. It means that we reach some point and we're ready to move to the next point. So a couple of examples of those is maybe your sprint begins, or you've completed a story, or something like that, right? But there's a second type of milestone that happens. It's far more sinister. And it's a milestone where, associated with that, we have to make a decision. And based on that decision, code either moves forward in the value stream or it moves backwards in the value stream. So an example of that is a code review. Okay, so if we were to do a code review, when we're done, we have to make a decision. Did the code pass the review? And if so, it moves forward, right? And if the answer is no, it didn't pass the code review, then we have to decide, wow, was it bad enough that we need to send it backwards and fix it, which is waste, by the way? Or do we just kind of let it go and smack the wrist of the developer saying, do better next time, Cheesy, you gotta get better, or something like that. So, that second type of milestone, those are the types of milestones that we, as agile practitioners, need to learn to eliminate. Because anytime we have a decision in which things can move backwards, there's a potential for us to introduce substantial waste into our flow, okay? Just so you know, going forward is good, going backward is bad. Can you guys repeat that for me? Going forward is good. Going backward is bad. Yeah, that's right. Good. Excellent. So, the largest decision point like that is testing software. So when we test software, what happens? It either passes the test, in which case it means we move software forward, it moves to that done column or whatever it is. Or if we find a defect, things move backwards in the value stream. Now I can tell you that the way we test software is, from my experience, the area of the most waste in our agile processes. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't test software, but I am saying that the way that we do it right now is really, really bad. So I want to introduce some other ideas. But what we end up having with the approach we have right now is what I call the development ping pong game. And you guys have all played it before, I know you have. It's where the very first time that the developer thinks he's done, he pings the code to the tester. Yes. And the first time that they start to test it, it takes what, 45 seconds or so before they find the first defect, right? So they call it back. Horrible, tragic. Well, he fixes that defect and pings it back, and then the second time it takes a whole 3.5 minutes before they find the next defect. And I see that eat up a lot of time. I know some of you do because I've had some conversations with you here yesterday where you say that you spend a lot of time fixing defects. So let's talk about a few ideas around that. But first of all, I want to introduce this idea of why manual testing, the way that we manual test things, is so very expensive. So when I talk about manual testing here, I'm not talking about exploratory testing, James Bach, a la, the Apex. I'm talking more about building out a script and manually going through the script, which is exercising the application. So you see this little block right here? That's the amount of testing it takes for us in our first sprint. Very easy to do. Not all of you can do that much, can't you? In the second sprint, though, we have a little bit more to test. Because if you think about it, we've got to test the news stories that we're working on. And we've got to go back and retest the things that happened in the first sprint just to make sure that something didn't break there, right? And it continues on and on and on and on until it grows and grows and grows to a point where we can't do it. So what we're left with is we're left with making decisions around what are we not going to test. Because we have no choice. That is a very, very bad position. Well, there is another choice, I guess. We can continue to hire more and more and more testers, but pretty soon the company's going to run out of money because they had to build another parking garage for all of the park in, and so that's not usually a good idea to do that. So we know that this manual testing, first of all, if we're going to manual test, we're forced to test after the software is built because we can't manually execute something before. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce the idea that you guys are going to have to play off of here in just a second. Okay, so you want to pay attention. So a lot of Agile teams, they try to get to a point where they write the code, and immediately after they write the code, they test it, like within an hour or so, right here. So I'm going to introduce a little bit different idea here. I want to introduce the idea of testing it and coding it at exactly the same time. Okay? Now this might be a little bit of a stretch, but I want to introduce the players here. Okay? If you're one of these players, you may pay a little bit of attention. Maybe not, I don't care. So I want these two to work together. And let's talk about what that would look like, or what they would be doing. Okay? First of all, obviously the developer is going to be test driving their code with their pair, right? We know that drives quality, and it allows us to develop faster, we write less code, and all these other great things. At the same time, I want the tester to automate the acceptance test that we built. I'll talk about acceptance tests in just a moment, but I want them writing code. Okay? At the same time, the developer's goal then is to really kind of make those acceptance tests pass. And while they're busy doing that, I also want the tester to be doing exploratory testing on the code while we're still crafting it. Okay? Now this is a crazy idea, and a lot of folks I've talked to about this, they say it can't be done, it doesn't work. But I can tell you it really does. But there's a couple of key ingredients here. First of all, people have to actually like talk. Okay, talk to each other, especially developers and testers, and that's kind of hard sometimes. Right? Do you trust him? No, not at all. You know he writes bad code. What? Do you trust him? Yeah. Exactly. But if we build this shared goal between these two folks, their goal is to prevent defects. So the two of them work together until the story is done. In order for the tester to automate the acceptance test, they have to talk to the developer. In order for the developer to understand what they're building and how it's going to come together, they have to talk to the tester. And these guys have to really work closely together. My experience is that the automation is going to happen in a fraction of the time of the actual coding portion of this. And so what is the tester going to do? They're going to start doing exploratory testing on the story as it's evolving. So let's say if the story is a 2-day, take me 2 days to finish it. By the end of a half a day, there probably is something there I can start to look at. And as a tester, I want to pull that down my machine and start looking at it, because I love nothing more than to see things like this go on. You know, geez, I just took a look at this. It's not looking right. Can you come over here? Let's look at this together. And we work together. Oh, you're right. I totally missed that. And we want to work and try to find all the issues with the code together while we're still crafting the code. Why? Because we can fix it there, and it saves us an immense amount of time, number one. Number two, it drives collaboration in the team. You remember this, right? That's where we ended up. Let's play it again with a little change, okay? This is, you guys are going to be up in a second. But first of all, notice that I have just removed the distinction between development and test. Okay? So,
Scandalous.
what's that?
Scandalous.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. So, product owner, you still got meetings to go, so we know how important those are, right? But that's okay, because we pick up the ball and these two start working together. Now, we still have questions, we still have emails, so we still get to throw things across the room. That's pretty cool, huh? But when we get the answer, everybody knows that's working on it knows the answer, because we're working together. When we find a defect, we just fix it. There's no need to log it because we're working together to craft the code. So, a slight difference, but let's see where this plays out. We say we're done, great. Eventually review, review, review. The remainder of this is the same. Okay? And we've got our UX person, and yes, oh my, we'll have to go back just a second. I want you guys to go ahead and act out this one first before I do my story time. So the one we just solved. So what we're going to do this time is get the developer and tester to do a little bit of collaboration without beating each other to the pole. Okay? Can you do that? Let's go. You don't even need to be planning. Just go. Just go. Yes. Although we need to remove one of these chairs, right? So let's take which one? Yeah, this one's gone. So one of you needs to stand up after this.
Skin on his back.
So, I have
Thanks.
a
What do you think?
I think it looks pretty circular.
It is spherical.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. So really trying to
Right? Not sure what that is.
No, that's the, I think that's the product.
Can you know,
Right, send that one.
but, yeah, some clarification on this.
Now box, here it comes. Whoa.
Spam filter!
Whoa.
All right, well, let's get down to it. Yeah,
That's
let's
it.
get started, right?
I'll just
So,
put it on your shoulder so I can no chair anymore.
well, we can stand. Yeah, we gotta keep this. It's up, we're standing, right? Healthier way to.
Got a better be back.
Right on. All right, so I'm thinking that when we do this, you would be like, I don't know, lots of.
Your email got lost.
Oh, should I
Oh, what does it say?
Amazing. Oh, it is a sphere.
Definitely spherical.
Yeah.
With a peace sign.
And a peace sign,
Yeah,
okay.
with a
Cool.
peace sign.
All right, well, so I'm gonna lay the peace sign out like this, so you can probably assume that, like from an automation perspective, that
Yeah.
there'll be this control of that kind of thing and stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I'll start working on testing that peace
I'm
sign.
gonna start like
Automate that one.
getting that stuff in there, right on.
He's looking pretty good. He's looking pretty good. But I did find the peace sign's in the wrong spot. So
Oh, wow.
just let you know that hole's there. It's got to be on top rather than the
How the hell do you know that?
Our product owner is getting weaker, I think, with each.
Oh, you're right.
That's what meetings will do to you. That's what meetings will do to you, folks. Don't go.
Oh, yeah, so I'll fix that up.
There you go. Okay, fantastic. That's nice. Things look good.
Right on.
I think we have this sphere and the peace sign. It's done.
Ready to go?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. You can check it out.
And check it out.
Let's go grab his gear.
Still got the peace sign, which I find a problem, and still not fitting through the hole.
You're a hater!
Also, I'm pretty sure we wanted it to be a square.
So it could roll really well.
I also think the floor is slant.
That's your problem.
That's my problem.
All right, so
Still
that's,
wrong. Better fix that.
well, okay, so do we need more tests? Something to,
No, I think the testing's fine. Maybe we can do extra testing, unit testing.
So change the interaction a little bit.
Yep.
Did some of this stuff. Okay, I think.
Yeah, work together on this.
All right, so we got a shot of
All right. Are you done yet? Sorry.
Jaeger. Pretty done, yeah.
All right. All right. One more time here. Let's give them a hand again. Or actually, we need to do some photos. So there are actually 4 beads on the line, folks. This is great, isn't it? So let's do this again. Oh, nobody? Okay. This time. Congratulations. Look at that. So this little change that we just talked about, I have done with a lot of teams. Okay? And when I go in and start to do this, people say, well, that's not going to work. That's crazy. But we have seen huge success in just kind of eliminating the distinction. In fact, one of my clients actually eliminated the testing role within their company. They now have a role that they call engineers. Period. And developers and testers both fall into this role. It's kind of a strange thing, but one of the reasons they did that was because there was a disparity in pay, for one thing. The developers got paid a lot more than the testers, and they were expecting their testers to be able to execute at the same high level that they wanted the developers to. And so it seemed natural to them to do this. And so I'm not saying that. I didn't suggest that. That was something they did on their own, but it's actually working really well for them. So they have some engineers who focus on production code, and they have some engineers who really focus on building test automation and exploratory testing. So, anyway, it's story time. So, probably 2.5 years ago or so, I began working with a new team, and this team was already doing Agile, and one of the processes that they had in place was every time they had a defect, or they discovered a defect inside of a sprint, they would write that defect on a red index card and they would stick it up on their wall. So red was the color to let the team know we found something. So if you were doing something and the red card went up, you'd stop and you'd go try to address that right away. That was kind of the process that we had. And the first week that I was there, they had 10 red cards that went across the board. So the following Monday, I sat down with the tester and said, hey, walk me through these 10 red cards we had last week. I want to understand what they were. And 8 of the 10 were UI defects. Something was misspelled, or something wasn't exactly like the mock-up, or something like that. And so I thought about it for a while. Tuesday morning stand-up, when it was my turn to talk, I told the team, I'm so happy for you guys, because guess what? We're not allowed to have UI defects anymore. And everyone kind of looked at each other. This strange guy with strange hats here. Should we say something that's not possible? I said, no, really. We're not going to have these anymore. We're not allowed to have them. And here's what we're going to do. When the developer believes that the story is done, when they think it's done, they're going to ask the tester to come over and spend 5 minutes with them and look at the UI. Who here is a developer? How long does it take to fix a typo on an app? I'll say 5 seconds, exactly. How long does it take to move something on the screen? Usually very quick, right? So those are things that if somebody points it out to you and you know it, it just takes a matter of seconds to resolve it. But if we let it go and we don't realize it at that time, what happens? Well, it goes through the build, it gets deployed into some environment, they find that this whole massive waste takes place, right? So we tried that for the week. And within a week or so, guess what? We had no more UI defects. Now, occasionally one would crop up, but it was so rare that we essentially said that those kind of defects just went away. Now, we weren't doing more work at all, because someone was already reviewing the UI, right? All we did is we just changed where that was happening in the team's workflow. So instead of it happening way out here, we just kind of moved it up. Okay? So we're going to see what that might do to our play. So you guys get ready again. It's going to be very similar to the last one, except one little difference. So yeah, here we go. I'm going to kind of fast forward through it. Yes, we've seen this. We know all about this. We know about this. Yes, question. Email. So we still get to throw things. Cool. Excellent. We find a defect. We fix it. In this case, the usability or UX person, user experience person, comes in. And since they're one of those folks that we know traditionally gets to look at the software after we say it's done, we want them to look at it when we think that we're getting close to done. That could be your performance testing team. That could be any of those teams. We want to do that as rapidly to get quick feedback as we possibly can. If they find something, we just fix it right there, and away they go. Perfect. So we have just streamlined the process ever so slightly. And there we go. So this is only a slight variation of the previous one. But I think there's more beads at stake here. So let's see. I think this will be a 2-bead one. Okay? So go ahead. It's your floor. Uh-oh, they're plotting this time. Yep.
Oh, look, the store. Awesome.
Well, that's what I got.
Yeah, we're working on it. Oh, yeah, so good. Yeah, that's whatever. Hey,
Thanks, bud.
over here. Oh, not so far. Okay. Oh, no, we'll change. We'll change.
Yeah.
Pretty much, this is pretty much big. Hey, dude, come over here.
Face the line, sir.
All right, you think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think of that. Got that. And it's blue.
Oh, right. Well,
Spot anyway.
right.
All right, exactly.
Well, I'm good.
That looks great.
Awesome.
Wow! Amazing! Okay, let's go again. Oh, it's not here. Okay. 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 Everybody's going to get beads in case you can't tell. I'm all about making sure that everybody has their share. So. Okay, we're going to talk about the product owner later, okay? Because this is a really important role in that job. And I kind of see the product owner as being responsible for 3 things. Obviously, the one thing is they help us understand the story and collaborate, those sort of things, right? That's the key thing they do. They are the person who's kind of responsible for the software that the team delivers. Yeah, so a lot of responsibility. Whatever comes out is your fault. It's bad. One of the other very, very, very important skills that I think a product owner has to have, and I see this missing often, is a product owner really has to know and understand what not to build. And so I want to take just a couple of seconds and talk about that. But first of all, we'll talk about how they're the person that's responsible for delivering the software. Okay? So I'm going to go out a little graph. This is a timeline, and these are the features that have been requested. So we are given this little fictitious X up here, go, go, go. So what Agile does is Agile starts delivering very quickly small little pieces of software. How do we know what pieces to deliver first? Well, the product owner asks us, usually by value, right? This is more valuable, and you miss the, but there's other criteria as well. If you missed the prioritization talk yesterday, you missed something really good. I thought it was fantastic, so thanks for that. And so we continue to deliver, but you see, the interesting thing about this is it's the product owner that's steering the team and making some of those decisions, so that when we hit this point right here, if we continue to work on the highest value software, at this point, the team's actually delivered the highest value product that they possibly could have delivered. And what comes out here really is the responsibility of the product owner, because they're steering. It's not the responsibility of the team. Now, the team has other responsibilities I'm not going to get into in this talk, but that is what the product owner does. Now, the whole value thing and deciding what not to build, I said, is really critical as well. So I'm going to make a little different chart here where we're going to talk about time, and we're going to talk about this thing that's really hard to define, which is value. Right? I'm not going to try to define it because there's a lot of ways it can be defined, and it's probably different for every company, and that's cool. It should be. But if we are playing the highest value stories first, the first sprint, we are going to deliver the most value. And the second sprint, by definition, we're probably going to deliver just a little bit less value, right? Because we played the top stories in the first sprint, the second sprint, we played this next set of stories, and so on. And yeah, I know priority changes over time. We're going to assume in this case, just for the sake of this illustration, that it doesn't. But what we would see if we continue to play that project over time is that the amount of value that we deliver, we start to get to the lower value stories, and then we keep going down to even get the lower value stories. But the interesting thing is that it costs the same amount of money to deliver this really high value sprint as it does to deliver this really low value sprint. Why? Well, the reason is because our cost is our team. As we heard this morning, it's not the coffee. That's not our cost. I mean, that's incidental. It's the team, and that's pretty much fixed. And so, good product owners are very good at knowing, right about here, I've gotten about 80% of the value out of this product. Do I want to keep spending money to get these low value things or not? And good product owners know when to cut it off and say, done. There's other things, I'm not willing to spend that much for this, or even this. So I think that's a very, very important skill, and I think that goes toward delivering a quality product. What to build. So this is our project, and we've got a few really high-level features here. And these features might take a month or two or so to build. And we'll ultimately break those down into stories that we can play, right? There's a practice called earned business value. I use it with nearly every team I work with. It's an opportunity for a product owner to assign a numeric value to each story. And I'm not going to go into the practice because it's fairly complicated. It will take a while. But you end up with doing things like this, where you put numbers with your stories, and then at the end of each sprint, you just add those up. And you literally start to build those graphs where you can see the value going down. And that's very, very telling to us. And what I'm showing you here is actually very, very common, where we'll have several features, but one of the features is far more valuable than the others. And the others might be, nice to have or whatever. So if we were a development team, we would really hone in and focus on this feature, right? Because we're getting the most value. If we were done, we might also decide, this is also valuable, but we might realistically look at this and decide these other things, they would be nice, and maybe sometime in the future we'll come back and add them. For right now, I've got some other things to do. This is part of the secret to delivering. I know one of the open space talks yesterday was deliver fast, or go fast, or something like that. Well, the whole notion of playing and working on a project where we follow it down and continue to get all those really, really low value cards doesn't help with that, trying to go fast. But maximizing and getting the maximum value out of a single project, and then moving to a second project where we maximize the value we get out of that. Now that helps us go fast because we're delivering more value. So, now back to the really critical part, and this is going to lead up to your last and final play, okay? When we talk about elaborating stories, I can tell you that the product owner doesn't have all the skills and the experience that they need to do it. We kid ourselves and say that they do, but they really don't. What do we need to do? Well, my experience is that if we add testers into that whole specification piece, we end up with a much, much richer specification. Because they think about other conditions. You know, they think, well, here's some things that could go wrong, or have you thought about this or whatever. And so when we add testers into that specification phase, it just becomes so much more thorough and rich, as opposed to us discovering this stuff later. And actually, I find that when we add developers to the specification phase, we learn a couple of things. We learn what's possible, first of all. Can we really do this or not? But even more interesting is we learn about options. You see, it's very common for a product owner to come to there and say, here's what I want. And the developers have experience in the code, and they know what's there. And it's very common to have a developer say, you know, we did something that was very similar to that, but it was a little bit different. But it would probably take half the time as it would take to do this. And I think it maybe gives you most of what you want. Let's take a look at it. And having those options and delivering those to the product owner before they lock in on what it is that they want is invaluable. So we regularly do this thing that we call the three amigos, where we get the product owner and the tester and the developer together to finalize, to elaborate the spec. And just like we heard this morning, we like to do that just in time. I don't do that days or weeks ahead of time. I'm going to play this again and see how that plays out. But before I do, every time that this will be my fourth time to give this talk. And the first 3 times I had somebody come up to me after the talk and say, you don't have business analysts on your slides. Where's the business analyst? What are they doing? You guys say that already?
Yeah, where is
Yeah, see? So I'm just saving myself some time by mentioning it now.
I was happy.
One of the things that we have been experimenting with recently, and myself and some other coaches that work for the company that I work for, is we have noticed that it's very, very common to have business analysts on the team, or like the liaison between the product owner and the team. But anytime that there's clarification that needs to happen, we have to relay that out to the product owner and wait for them to come back to us. You know, and if they're in close proximity, if they're set with the team, that's fine. But in especially larger companies and corporations, that's not always possible. And so we found that pattern to be kind of really wasteful. And so one of the things that we've been experimenting with recently is flipping that around, having the product owner set with the team, having the business analyst report to the product owner, and they're the ones that go out to the meetings. So they go out, represent the product owner at the meetings, and bring the information back to the product owner. Because now we've got the decision maker setting with the team, so if there's clarification or if there is a need for a quick decision, it happens immediately instead of, yeah, sorry guys, no email this time. Instead of using email or some other horrible means of communication like that. So that's something we've been experimenting with, and we're seeing some successes and some places not. So we're going to continue to try to push that envelope a little bit and see where it takes us. So here we go. The product owner is taking the first stab at writing the acceptance tests. We know they're not going to be finished, but it's at least a way for them to get their mind around what it is that they want to do. The ball goes over to the team, and lo and behold, the product owner is there with the team, and we have our three amigos meeting. What are they doing here? Well, they're reviewing what the product owner originally came to them with, and they're making it complete. They're elaborating. They're filling in some of the details. The developer and tester are making decisions around, should we build an automated test for this? Because we've learned that trying to automate everything we could possibly think of is not practical. We don't want to do that. But there are some things that we do want to do, build automation around. And once they're done, everybody has this common understanding. Would you look at that collaboration, huh? They start building it. If there's a question, it just gets answered. There's no email. If there's a defect, it just gets fixed. Everybody's kind of working together as a team. We bring this person in. If they find a defect, well, before it gets worked, it gets sent out. When we move this thing over to be reviewed, guess what? The product owner has already seen it 5, 6, 7 times. There's no mystery. In fact, if there was something that wasn't exactly right, guess what? We adapted while we were building it. as opposed to doing rework. We just adapted. You know, that idea was great in my head, but now that I'm starting to see the first pieces of it become real, I think I want to change my mind on part of it. That's fine, because we're still building it. It's easy to do. So this is your final skit. There's 2 beads at stake here. We're running out of time, so luckily there's not too many moving parts. Go for it.
I wrote today your story. How does it look like? It's detailed now?
Yeah, it's not good. Like, does texture matter? Is it this color?
Yeah.
So we should write out like some specs around texture.
I should make some tests with texture, color, and ground, and
Yeah.
stuff.
Hey, we'll get started. Sure. That's awesome. All right. So,
Yeah, look pretty good. Hey,
Love the sound effects.
Oh, yeah.
what color's meant to be? Oh, alright, cool. So yeah, choices. Keep going.
All right.
Yeah, right.
Okay, cool.
Alright,
So, how are your tests going? You guys, are they running or what?
Oh my god!
Don't be dramatic. It's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little too big.
That's okay. Well, let's figure that out. All right. Sounds good.
Fixed. Alright.
That's good. Hey, Jester, come over here. Hey, check out. So this. So here are the specs.
I got this.
Oh, you're not down for goals.
Well, it's okay, but I mean, it's,
What do you think there? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, that's not. No problem.
Take it on.
Here, go check it out.
I think some of you should get pictures of this so it's up on Twitter. Just saying. Wonderful. I'm going to make a decision here. There you go. Everybody turn their So, a lot of what I observed when I was working with Agile teams is that we still have these handoffs. And these handoffs really keep us from collaborating the way that we want to. And so, as we started to implement acceptance test-driven development, what we saw was that when we started, we thought that this was really about automation. We're going to get all this fantastic code, automation everywhere. We were all excited about it. But as we started working with teams and doing this, the thing that we found out was, yeah, we got automation, don't get me wrong, it happened. But the thing that was far more beneficial to us was the collaboration that came as a result of introducing this practice. And that collaboration actually drove defects down far more than the automation did. Now, the automation was important. I don't want to underestimate, play that down at all. But just the fact that folks had to, in order to do it right, had to work and talk and collaborate and work together and check on each other and stuff was simply amazing. So I'm going to close by talking, because we're talking about quality assurance as a team sport. Well, I think senior management has a very, very important role to play here as well. There's no more skits, you guys are done, you can just relax. By the way, I didn't tell you, for participating, you guys get to keep your swag here. These hats, wear them proudly throughout the conference. Yay! So, okay. Senior management. What's their goal? Well, if you talk to a lot of the executives, they have a certain amount of spend, a certain budget that they get each year, and they're trying to figure out, based on this budget that I have, how can I truly maximize what I get in return for it? And that's a lot of what they're trying to do, right? And so the way that we often go about doing that is just all screwed up. It's totally wrong. The way we do that is we say, well, if we're going to maximize it, let's try to push our teams to do more. Right? Let's try to figure out how we can push our teams to do more. And a lot of folks think that that's what Agile is. Well, Agile, we're going to get more code, it's going to go faster, everything's going to go a whole lot faster, right? So heck yeah, as an executive, I'm all about that. agile, because I get more for my money. Well, not necessarily. So, I want to introduce a little bit different idea here. And so, when you're at an executive level or a steering level, you no longer look at a single project, right? You look at a set of projects, and you try to prioritize them, and the whole notion is that, well, project 1 is the most important, so we'll do it first. And then when we're done with that, we'll move to project 2, because it's the second most important project, and so on and so on. So we get build into steering committees to make those decisions for us. That's kind of how we do it. Do you remember this picture that we looked at earlier? And we said that, on this project, we get a lot of value out of just doing this. And heaven forbid, I don't want to spend a lot of money doing this because it's a low value thing. What we find is if we take this notion and elevate it just a little bit and start to look across projects, it really, as an executive, helps us maximize our return. Because if we think about it, when we're spending a lot of money on low value things, we're not getting a good return for our money. Right? So as an executive, yeah, we absolutely want to knock that one out. But I got this other project sitting here with a very high value thing. If I go chasing after this and chasing after this, I no longer can get to this, or it's going to take me much longer to get to that. So I'm spending the same amount of money to deliver 100 points of value as I would to deliver 800 points of value. And if you're trying to maximize your return on investment, that's not a very wise way to do it. So, anyway, that was just a notion that I wanted to throw out there because I think that executives have a really large role to play in this. This is the last slide that I have, and I have it here because I still run into lots and lots of folks who have this notion of done, done. Now, do you guys know what I mean when I say done, done? How many of you are doing that right now? Yeah? Yeah? So I have a friend named George Dinwiddie. He said if you have 4 of them, you have Beethoven. Dun, 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 dun. Right? What done, done does is it creates some divisiveness in the team. Okay? It really does. Because in your role now, your goal is not to see something finished. Your goal is to get it to your done. And so as a result, it really drains some of the collaboration out of the team. I don't have time to talk to you. I've got to get my part to my done call. And so one of the very first steps that I do when I go into a team, because a lot of what I painted here doesn't happen day one, right? It takes time to get to do some of these things. But one thing that we can do right away is eliminate this interim done, because nothing really is done. As we saw from the very first animation, those things that we thought were done, we learned much later that they really weren't done at all. And so I'm on this whole done is evil kick. And that's all I have. Thank you guys for your action today, and thank you for listening.